Hello and welcome to the HR Kyle podcast, the ultimate resource for HR insights and guidance that will empower both seasoned business professionals and eager job seekers. I'm HR Kyle, your host. I'm excited to embark on this journey with you. In each episode, we'll delve into the intricacies of HR management, uncovering strategies that can transform the way you approach talent acquisition, employee engagement, and workplace dynamics. Whether you're a seasoned HR pro navigating the ever-evolving landscape of human resources or a job seeker striving to land your dream position, this podcast is your compass. Our mission is simple: to provide you with actionable knowledge, expert interviews, and inspiring stories that will help you thrive in the world of HR. So, sit back, relax, and get ready to take your HR game to the next level. Welcome to the HR Kyle podcast, where HR meets success. Hello and welcome to episode 4 of the HR Kyle podcast. I'm your host, HR Kyle. In segment 1 today, we'll be tackling some of the most common questions I receive about job searching and interviewing, providing you the guidance you need to succeed. Then in segment 2, we have a special guest, Brian, who will share his fascinating career journey, highlighting the unique path he's taken and the invaluable lessons he's learned along the way. It's another information-packed episode you won't want to miss. Don't forget to subscribe, explore our other episodes, and share your thoughts in the comments. Now a quick word from our sponsors before we dive in. Welcome back to the HR Kyle podcast in episode 4. We hope you enjoyed that brief break from our sponsor, hrkyle.com. We're all set to continue our discussion on job searching, interviewing, and hear more of our guest, Brian, about his incredible career journey. Let's dive right back in for more valuable insights and engaging conversations. In segment 1, we're going to dive into a topic that's on the minds of many of our job seekers who are listening: common job search questions. Whether you're a seasoned professional or just starting out in your career, we've got answers to the questions you've been itching to ask. Get ready to uncover tips, strategies, and solutions to make your job search more successful. So let's get started. Keep in mind these questions, and you can hear the paper rattle as I pull them in front of me. These questions were submitted to me by various job seekers that I work with and those that I know. So we're going to work through these questions. These are the most common questions, and I'll provide you my answers and my perspective on these questions. So question number 1, here's a big one. How do I answer the pay question? Well, first off, you do answer it. So many times I'll hear advisors out there saying, give this clever response, or you really want to dodge that question. No, you don't. You want to get that question out, and ideally it's coming out early in the process. Why? Why should you waste time being interviewed for a job, considering that position, if there's a gap between the pay that you desire and the pay the company's willing to offer? So why not get that question out in the open right from the beginning? You'll find now too that many more companies are being much more transparent about sharing that information, even in the job posting. You don't need to initiate that question, but when it's asked, and I hope it's asked early, you need to answer it. How do you answer it? You answer it with an informed decision. Study that job description, understand what a job that looks like that should pay. And again, in this day and age, you can research jobs and what they pay. There's a lot of information on a tool called Google. So you can Google search and find out what jobs are paying, and it'll take you to places that have pay information. So whatever that job is, based upon the description, do research on companies that are similar to that company that you're applying to, doing that job with that particular job title with the experience you have. In addition, be sure that you think about the question from the standpoint of what do you need to make and what would you feel satisfied in earning? When I ask candidates that question, and by the way, I do it first call. The first time we talk, I ask them at some point during the conversation, I say, and now I want to talk about a subject that I know it feels a little bit early, but I want to get it out in the open. What would be your pay requirements for this position to feel appreciated and to feel comfortable with the pay that you're earning. That's exactly how I ask it. I ask it that way because that's how you need to consider it, and that's how you need to answer it. What's going to make you feel satisfied, comfortable, and appreciated from a pay standpoint or the role that you're being considered? And you do need to think about that question out of the gate. There's no more irresponsible response to me when I have a candidate say, well, I haven't thought about it or I'm not sure. That's just the same as saying, I don't know what your company does and I don't know why I'm applying. To me, I equate those two. So again, do your research, think about what's comfortable for you and what the dollar amount is that you need. And quite frankly, don't be afraid to share it, because if there's a mismatch, you really don't want that job anyways. You'll be unhappy. So that's question number one. Answer the question and do your research in advance. Okay, here's another one. I just got asked this one last week. When do I talk about special requests? And what they're referring to is special work schedule requests. You've got a vacation that's coming up real soon, and if you start the job, you got a vacation that's going to happen within a month or so. You really want to talk about those as you get further along in the process. So in other words, when the company says, hey, we've narrowed this decision down to you and one other person, and this is the last interview, it's at that point that you want to share it. Anytime earlier than that, it's irrelevant. They're not thinking quite yet about you actually coming to work for them, and they're thinking about a date when that's going to start and what the training is. Up to that point, they're still working on trying to imagine you in the role. Remember what we talked about a couple of episodes back? You're helping them early on to imagine you in that role. You derail yourself if you ask these questions too early, because all of a sudden they're going beyond imagining you in the role, and they're imagining you taking time off from the role or needing some special accommodation or whatever relative to the position. So you don't want to ask it too early. But by the time you've gotten towards the end of the process and you're one of the final candidates to be considered, at this point, they're imagining you stepping in on day one and what the first few weeks are going to look like and so on. It's at that point that you add this other bit of information, if relevant, to say, Mr. Hiring Manager, I just want to be totally open with you. I know we're towards the end of the process. My family and I do have our annual summer vacation planned for the week of June 18th. And we've already paid for that, and it's on the book. So I would need 5 days off the week of June 18th. Is that going to pose a problem for you? The answer really from that employer standpoint should be no, because if they're thinking long term, 5 days off, even a couple of weeks into a new job, really isn't going to matter. But if it's an employer who's not going to be accommodating to other requests you're going to have, and they're just not going to be appreciative of work-life balance, and they answer that question other than anything but a definitive yes, that's a red flag for you. Because I can assure you, if you're taking a week off in June, even though it's a couple weeks into a new job is a problem, there's going to be a lot of other things that you're going to bring up that are going to become a problem. So that can also be a screening question on your part, because remember, as we talked about a couple episodes back, you're interviewing them as well. So that's when you talk about special requests. Same holds true for work schedules. If there's days that you need to leave early or start later or what have you, you're asking that towards the end. Here's one that's come up, and this has been a more recent occurrence as we as a culture have gotten a little more casual with dress, and that is, how should I dress for the interview? And again, I've heard varying opinions on this, but I'm going to speak from my perspective and the perspective of those that I work pretty closely with in the profession. And that is, dress above the position that you're looking for, if you can afford it. Now, some people don't have the money to buy a suit and do all that. At a minimum for men, a shirt and tie. At a minimum for ladies, slacks and a blouse, a nice blouse or something of that nature. So in other words, look up the term business professional and see how that's defined, whether you're a man or a woman, and what that looks like. That's how you want to dress for an interview, because no one's ever going to be upset that you overdressed, but they are absolutely going to notice if you underdress. Okay, that's going to be a strike against you. But nobody's ever said in an interview, gosh, I would have hired that person, but they dressed too nice. Nobody's ever said that. And again, do you really want to work for a company that says you dress too well for an interview? So again, business professional is always going to be your standard for interviews. Okay, Next one. This is a big one. We all get asked this one. How do I answer the question about why I'm looking for a new job? Especially if I've been let go from a previous job, if I don't like the company I'm currently working for and I just really hate them and I want to get out of there. I'm leaving because I'm not getting paid enough, the benefits are terrible, et cetera, et cetera. Well, you certainly want to be tactful and professional about your answer. But a couple of things that you don't want to do if you're leaving a negative situation, regardless of what it is, please do not dwell on the employer that you're leaving or that you've left or they've terminated you. Don't dwell on that. We as the hiring side, we don't want to hear a long story about it. We really don't. We're very comfortable with you saying something like, and again, make sure there's some truth in this, but if it's a culture problem, you just really don't like the company, you can say, I worked there for this period of time, and in getting to know the company more and more, I've just found that there's a bit of a mismatch from a culture standpoint and the environments that I work really well in and the environment that this company offers. They've been great to me. They provided me a lot of opportunity. I certainly appreciate that. But in order for me to feel like I'm reaching my full potential, I'm looking for a new work environment that's a better fit for where I thrive. Bingo. The other thing that does, and I want you to remember this, I'm going to talk about this frequently whenever we talk about interviewing. Always be going to something. Don't be leaving something. On the interview side, we love to hear that you're going to something and you see us as the thing that you're going to. Nobody wants to be the thing that somebody's escaping from. Imagine a dating relationship. Well, I'm dating you because I can't stand that last guy that I was involved in. Not going to go over too well. But if you tell that future mate of yours, I'm dating you because you're the best catch out there, look at the difference. Imagine you're on the receiving end of that. So again, employers are the same way. We want to feel like you're coming to us, not that you're running away from something else. And again, all of your answers, regardless of the circumstance that you're leaving, can fit around that. Because let's say the companies let you go. Don't lie about that. Let us know. You were part of a reduction in force. You were part of a layoff situation. Don't be ashamed of that. Those things happen. Companies let people go because they can't afford financially to keep them. We understand that. Again, keep the story short and concise and make sure you turn it around and make it clear to the person that you're talking to that you're going to them. I don't want to hear a long story about how bad the last company was, how terrible they treated you. It's the worst work environment you've ever worked in, et cetera, et cetera. And guess what? I've heard all of those things in an interview, so I'm not making those up. Um, I have a name for the people that talk like that in an interview. Unemployed is what I call them because we're not going to hire them if they have that sort of an attitude because they're going to bring that negativity to our workforce. And part of what we're looking for are people that are going to be positive to our work environment. Okay, how do I explain gaps in employment? Please do it. Be honest as much as you can. Again, avoid a lot of detail. I don't want you getting down into the nitty gritty of how you spent each week of each month of each year that you were off. Be honest about it. Be forthright as far as what you were doing with that period of time. We get it as employers. We know there are times when you might be out of work. We get it when you have home obligations that maybe you have to take time off to take care of those. Possibly you had a spouse that relocated and that required you to give up a job. There could be some other obligations. Whatever it is, though, tell us the truth and take those head on. Believe me, we're thinking about it. If we're in an interview, and if you interview with me, I'm going to ask you about it. Some interviewers don't. They like to bring you in for an interview. They see a gap, it doesn't come up, so they just say, well, I'm not going to hire that person. So what you want to do is anything on your resume, like a gap or anything else that's a red flag, you bring it up. Why? Because you control the dialogue around it. You control the conversation. Do not sit there and think, well, if I just don't talk about this employment gap, they'll not notice it. We notice. We absolutely notice. Quick story around that. Met with a gentleman, and this is probably the most ingenious way of trying to disguise a gap in employment. He had, it was about a 5-year stint on his resume, and he worked for a particular company. It was all initials, and I saw it, and I thought, gosh, I know a lot of companies, but that one just doesn't ring a bell. And he listed his duties, and they were logical enough. It was housekeeping is what he listed his job duties as being at this particular company. But again, in my interview style, I always want to hear the story behind the resume and understand these employers and how they ended up there and how they left. Well, when I asked him about ABC Company or however he had it listed, he said, well, I got to be honest with you. I was serving a sentence of 5 to 7 years at this particular prison. And that stands, those letters that are listed there stand for the prison name. So again, had to give him some credit there for creativity because otherwise I wouldn't have noticed. And I certainly empathize with his situation there. And working for a second chance employer, obviously we were able to move forward and consider him for a role. But again, admire the creativity for that, but ultimately you're going to have to explain those things. So be prepared to take it head on. Letting people know you're looking seems desperate. Oh my gosh. Saw a posting about this on LinkedIn very recently. For those who don't know LinkedIn, you're able to add a banner to your profile page on LinkedIn, actually to your picture that says that you're looking for a job or something to that effect. And there were a fair number of recruiters, and I say that word loosely, that term loosely actually, that said, "Oh my gosh, that just seems so desperate when employees do that, or when candidates do that." And I love it that they feel that way because that's what I call dumb. And what that means is those are more candidates for someone like me who actually looks for good quality people and I don't get hung up on those things. In other words, put that banner up. If you're looking for a job, put that banner on your profile. If you're looking for a job, network, talk to people you know. Let them know that you're looking. You don't have to get into a long story. People understand it. Let them know that you're looking for a good job and if they know anybody to refer you. Work your network, work those other sources. And for the company, and again, if you're worried about the company that says, oh my gosh, it seems so desperate, I wouldn't hire somebody like that, ask yourself, do you really want to work at a company like that? Because that's just awfully nitpicky. No, the answer is no, you don't want to work there. Okay, here's a big one. And this might relate to our guest coming up later because when he and I were talking a couple of weeks ago, he asked me a similar question to this that he could share with his students and let a little bit of the cat out of the bag there about my upcoming guest. But he asked, his students were asking, when should I start my job search, especially if I'm a college student? So let's use the example of graduating in May. If you're graduating in May, you really want to start that job search in about January or February, okay? Not only apply to open jobs, literal open jobs that are coming open or that are open, but start doing your research on organizations that you're interested in. And it's okay to send them inquiries. And I've had people say, well, gosh, they don't have a job listed. Do I really want to send an inquiry to them? I don't want to bother them. Again, do you really want to work for a company who you say, gosh, I really want to work for you? Let me know if there's an opening. And they say, oh, geez, if you're going to do that, I'd rather not talk with you. You don't want to work for a company like that. Come work for my company wherever I am because you know what? I love getting those unsolicited, that's what I call them, unsolicited resumes where you say, gosh, I've done the research. I love the company you work for and what you stand for. If there's ever an opening, please let me know. Because guess what I do? I put those resumes back and I let you know when I've got an opening that matches your skills, and I'm thrilled to do that. So start that search January, February. If you're graduating in December, you're going to start that search in about August timeframe. Okay. You're getting that dialogue started. It's not too early. Trust me. Even if you apply for an opening and they're looking to fill it soon, at least you've got feelers out there and you've got people that are possibly acting on your behalf. So, what about references? One, have them. Have at least 3 ready at all times. When you start that job search, have your resumes already ready to go. Don't wait till you get to the final stage and you got to drum up 3 people and you got to let them know and so on and so forth. Have those references on the ready because not only are they going to be references for you, but they might also help you in your job search because you can say, hey, Sarah, you and I have known each other for a long time. I need to ask you a favor, and it's something I'd really appreciate. I'm looking for a new job, and I'd love to be able to use you as a reference when that point in time comes. More than likely, Sarah's going to say, yes, be happy to. Oh, but guess what? She might also say, hey, Jim, I'm glad you brought that up. We're hiring at my company. Why don't you send your resume over with me and we'll see what we can do. So again, get your resume set up before you need them, right when you start your job search. And remember too, they may be a good source for recommendations. Final thing, This is a big one too for those who are employed. How do I look for a job while employed? Well, you do it during your free time. You do it during lunches, breaks, and in the evenings and weekends. We're fortunate now that we live in a time of the greatest level of technology in mankind. It's very easy to use your cell phone, and we all have them now. We all have smartphones. Very few people don't. Use those to find, excuse me, to find those open jobs and apply to them. Make sure your resume is loaded to your phone and have at it. Apply to those jobs. Use that phone as a tool. It's not just for texting, Facebook, and phone calls. Use that cell phone as your tool that allows you the flexibility, no matter where you are, to apply for jobs and do your job searching and your research. Well, guys, that's a wrap for segment 1. We've covered some of the most common job search questions, at least the ones that I've gotten, and I believe we provided you with some valuable insight. I want you to stay tuned for segment 2. This is where we're going to have a fascinating conversation with our guest, Brian, about his unique career journey. So don't go away. Let's keep the HR podcast rolling.
Are you a business owner looking to build a thriving team? Or perhaps a job seeker on a quest for your dream career? Look no further than HR Kyle. HR Kyle is your trusted partner for all things human resources. We're not just about services, we're about success. For businesses, HR Kyle offers tailored HR solutions from talent acquisition to compliance support. We're here to help your team flourish. And for the job seekers, HR Kyle provides personalized career guidance and direction that only a seasoned HR professional can offer. We'll help you find that perfect job match. Don't settle for less. Choose HR Kyle and unlock success today. Visit us at www.hrkyle.com. HR Kyle, unlocking potential, empowering careers, transforming business.
Welcome to segment 2 of the HR Kyle podcast. I'm your host, Kyle. In this part of the show, we have a special treat for you as we sit down with Brian to explore his extraordinary career journey. He's taken a path less traveled, and we're going to dive deep into his experiences and the valuable lessons he's learned along the way. So get ready for an inspiring and enlightening conversation. Let's jump right into it. So Brian is our guest today. Brian spent many years in the work world, building up his profession in the field of nursing. But most recently, he transitioned to the world of academia. And I really think our guests are going to benefit from talking to Brian. So Brian, welcome to
Well,
the
thank you,
HR
Kyle.
Kyle
It's a
podcast.
really great honor to be here on your podcast. I appreciate it for not only myself, but for my students. And you're right, I did not take the traditional path that most people follow. I want to give you a little background. In my mid-20s, I decided to go into another profession. And I recall reading about the nursing shortage that was only going to get worse. I remember reading this about 1985, that by the year 2000, the nursing shortage was going to be severe. So I was looking at job security. I did take some risks. I decided, even though there was very few men in the nursing profession in 1985, that I was going to go into the nursing profession. And I also thought it was very appealing that I would have a career where I was helping people. Now, in my career, I've done just about everything that a nursing professional can go through. I did become proficient in things like medication, IV therapy, supervision, even mentoring other young nurses. But where I've gained the most satisfaction is in teaching nursing students. Planting those seeds of knowledge is one way I can give back to my profession. And also, I've dedicated the last several years of my life to improving my profession. For example, I've worked for 25 years for the National Council of Licensure Examinations. We all know it as NCLEX. And I traveled all over the country, really, writing exam questions, reviewing potential exam questions, things like that. As most of you know, all nurses must pass their state boards or the NCLEX to become a nurse. And I wanted to be a part of this process, gain knowledge, and give back to my profession.
Brian, that's a wonderful intro, but you actually sell yourself a little short. You spent 35 years in nursing as a registered nurse, but you made a decision later in your career. In fact, when most people are transitioning to retirement, you really opened a new chapter of your life and your career at that point. Can you tell our
Yes, it's
listeners
an
a little bit
epic
more about that?
saga, really, Kyle. My story is a little different than most people. Yes, I worked in various hospital situations. I worked in ICU, med surg, and hospice. So anyone out there who's dealt with death and dying and hospice patients, it really takes its toll. I did become pretty well rounded. I became skilled at what I did, and I really worked hard to attain skills. That's one thing I want to get out there for nursing students as well as anyone in any profession that you're going after. I encourage you to gain as many skills as you can. That old saying, it's the skills that pay the bills, really does ring true. So 2016, I transitioned from hospital and home care to education. I found that teaching nursing students was the most rewarding job I've ever had. It was very fulfilling, but I knew I needed more than a bachelor's degree in nursing. I needed a master's degree to teach advanced practice nurses. So when I started toward this advanced degree, I really took some risks. I was in my mid 50s and getting up there where most people were thinking about retiring. But I took a lot of more risks than even I realized, I think, at the time. I really had no money. I did not have a full-time job. I had no real support except from some family members. And I had to work 2 years every day to attain a master's degree in nursing. And I also went for an emphasis on education. So it was important for me at my advanced age, late 50s, to stay positive and keep my focus. I did things like I bought a wind-up timer, for example, at a garage sale. I would set it up for 1 hour at a time, and I would work without interruption in the quiet of my basement for that hour. The alarm would go off, and I'd stop for about 15 minutes, visit my family. They seemed like nice people, eat something, and go back to work. And sometimes I would work till 2, 3 in the morning. I did it every day, and I stayed as positive as I could. So I thought getting the master's degree would be the end of my journey. But something in me was still looking for something else, and I really can't explain it. It's almost on a spiritual realm, but I knew I had to keep going. I decided to continue for my doctorate. I worked full-time going after my doctorate. It took another 2 years. I graduated with a 3.87 average. So, when I hear young people in particular say it's too difficult or there's too many obstacles. Well, I completed a master's degree at 60 and a doctorate at age 62. Not too many people can say that. It can be done, but it does take focus and dedication. So, get the word impossible out of your vocabulary.
Brian, that's a great story. And again, as you mentioned there, I work with a lot of different job seekers at different stages of their career. And one of the biggest things I hear holding them back is not the opportunities that lay before them, but their attitude about how
Mm-hmm.
how to best approach those. So it's important that a story such as yours get out there to say it really is your
That's
attitude
exactly
that
right. It
determines your
takes
outcome.
faith. Faith doesn't make it easier. Faith makes it possible to achieve your goals. Now, you do need a faith in a higher power. You need faith in yourself as well. Things that excite and move you are not random. I've heard you say that before on your podcast. They are connected to your purpose. That's why they excite you, because they are not random. They are connected. And someday you'll laugh at all the things you let bother you. But everything you can imagine can happen. But if you're going to embark on a journey in life, you have to do it with focus and determination. Seize the day. We've all heard that phrase, carpe diem. And that philosophy of life is really about living your best life, getting the most out of the gifts that life and the universe gives you. Now, I believe that all gifts come from above, from our Creator, and I appreciate all the gifts I've been given. So I say to everyone out there listening, be filled with gratefulness and thankfulness.
No, very, very, very good points. Brian, I want to transition a little bit. A fair number of my listeners and a fair number of the candidates and so on that I work with are transitioning from college environment or an academic school environment to the workplace. What are a couple of things that you would pass on to those individuals from your experience, having made that transition a couple of times, that has led
Well,
to
for
your
one thing,
success?
you have to embrace technology. Now, technology has really expanded and improved. In 1986, when I graduated with my first degree, there were no cell phones. No one had ever heard of the internet. All charting documentation was done with paper and ink. It's hard to believe now. It was quite tedious and subject to mistakes. There was no electronic health record. There was no PowerPoint, no GPS, no Word documents when I started in 1986. So the 21st century, it even advanced even further. There's Zoom, there's online education has really taken off, which allows people to really gain valuable training and advance their career. So I would say embrace technology and don't say I can't change, because I had to change. My career and really essentially my life depended on it. So I had to take those risks, and I had to change.
So in
That's
other words, the
correct.
only constant is change. Yeah, exactly. Brian, what final words of advice would you give to someone thinking about or making a job transition similar or to the same one
Well,
that you
number
went
one, you
through?
can do anything in life if you believe. Why would the universe put it in your heart to begin with if it wasn't meant to be? But once you make that decision, you have to trust it. And you have to remember that you can't chase the money. Follow your bliss. A satisfied life is better than a successful life. And maybe I better say that again, Kyle. A satisfied life is better than a successful life. How do we even determine what is success? It's how satisfied you are. And in the final analysis, we have to realize that a successful life is measured by others. A satisfying life is measured by you.
Brian, tremendous points that you've shared with our listeners today. I want to thank you for joining us, being a part of this discussion today. You've added a lot of great information, a lot of great guidance and things to think about for our audience. Before we wrap it up, I know you have a podcast. I want to allow you a few moments to pitch to our
Well,
audience
thank
your
you. I really
podcast.
appreciate that. Yes, I do a podcast. I've done 5 so far. They're on Spotify. They're free. And the title of it is Smart Lawyers Love Dumb Nurses. But it can be for anyone, whether you're in the healthcare field or not. I wanted something that was going to grab your attention, almost grab you by the throat, per se. But I welcome you to come in, listen in. I do include my faith in a lot of these points that I make, but it's about how to have a positivity in your life and the power of positive thinking, and keep fighting no matter what the obstacles that can be beneficial to you. So please join. It's on Spotify. And again, Kyle, I want to thank you very sincerely for allowing me a few moments to be on your tremendous podcast, which is also helping a lot of people in the job market. Thank you once again.
Yep. Well, Brian, thank you. It was great having you on the show today. I've enjoyed the conversation that we've had. You've shared some incredibly valuable information. I'm glad you made a pitch for your podcast as well. One of the big things that we do talk about whenever I work with candidates is just that positive attitude and being resilient. You will find those opportunities, and you really hit on that with so much of what you talked about today. So again, thank you for joining us, Brian. And thank you to all of you out there listening for tuning in to another episode of the HR Kyle podcast. And if you haven't done it yet, we really want you to subscribe and follow us. Please send your comments in as well. Obviously, we use that to drive the content that we provide to you each week. And until next time, take care.
Well, that's a wrap for today's episode of the HR Kyle podcast. We hope you found our discussion valuable and filled with insights that you can apply in your professional journey. Whether you're a business leader aiming to foster a thriving workplace or a job seeker looking to carve out your own path, remember that HR Kyle is the compass that can guide you towards success. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share it with your network. We're committed to being your trusted source for HR wisdom, and we look forward to having you back with us for our next episode. Remember, in the world of HR and professional growth, there's always room for progress. Be sure to visit our website at hrkyle.com. That's hrkyle.com to learn more about how we can help you meet your business and professional goals. So until next time, this is HR Kyle signing off. Stay motivated, stay informed, keep reaching for those career goals. Music provided by bensound.com. That's bensound.com.